Hey, it's Chris, Leisure Games. So, 2021 is about over, or post over, whatever. It's done. There were 39 games that funded for seven figures on crowdfunding between GameFound and Kickstarter in the year of 2021. Now, I can't compare that to other years. I don't have the numbers, I don't have the totals, but that's a lot. That's 36 individual games, all raising at least $1 million, several of them, many of them, raising multiple of that. Let's talk very briefly my brief reaction, my brief thoughts post campaign, post 2021 into 2022. Let's go now looking back at those. I'm going to give them all to you in under 39 minutes or as close thereto that I can. Let's see if I can do it. Challenge accepted. Now, I'm going to talk about every game that was more than seven figures, not just the games that were of interest to me. So let's do this. And this is also going to be in chronological order. So we're going to start all the way at the beginning of the year and work our way towards the end of the year. So you can kind of see, okay, how much time has passed? What does it look like now with retrospective vision glasses looking back on it? Now, Darwin's Journey, again, probably arguably the most anticipated, the highest funding Euro, actually, might be not the highest funding, worker placement style game, but probably the most for the more heavy side of things. But again, this is a deluxe Euro with a lot of stuff going on. It's going to cost you 70 euros, which looking back on a lot of the other deluxe Euros the rest of the year, this was actually a lower price point. Late pledging looks like it's still available, and it just raised over €1 million, and there's a lot going on here from a Darwin evolutionary side of things. Again, deluxeifications are becoming a thing. We're going to see a lot more of them on almost any major project. It's becoming an aspect of things. And we're seeing more and more videos, and this was just the beginning of things in terms of having like 3,700 videos. Stretch goals are all there too, and that was the other incentive to get Darwin's Journey in the first place because of all of this other stuff. And so, again, it's probably going to be one of the bigger hits of 2022 whenever it gets delivered because it's already overdue in terms of when it was initially projected. That's Darwin's Journey. Next up, Primal the Awakening, one that I actually backed. I all in on this. And again, I was an early bird, so I got the price point, and a lot of people were put off by the price point being so high, even to get in on it in the first place. That a core was 139 euros. At the same time, I give them a lot of props. I've been giving them a lot of props for the fact that they said, you know what, here's our price point from day one. You're going to see what you're going to get, and we're not going to throw in these other little trinkets and other little add-ons and other little expansions. We're not going to say this is the gameplay all in and reveal other non-gameplay other things later on in the campaign. I think this is going to be amazing. It's going to be really interesting to see what they can do with this little board here that is just completely unlike anything else we've ever seen in terms of tactical combat, boss battling nature. I mean, everything else is hex based, and so this is a big departure from that. And the question is, are people in the general consensus going to like it? The early videos from a lot of other channels on this page, Board Game Co., Jeremy Howard, they all really liked it. And the question is just going to be, are other people going to like it? I did a whole video just breaking down the rulebook, and I liked what the rulebook had, and the rulebook was complete. It was easy to read. I understood it, and so I had no issues or qualms from it from that standpoint. My only question is going to be, can you make like all like 16 or whatever all these monsters are going to be, however many there are, unique enough and different enough in terms of the mechanics? Can you make the characters and the hunters, I'll allude foreshadowing there later, unique enough as well to make them drastically different, to make you want to play it all in that sense? You can do one-offs, you can do a campaign, however you want to do it. And again, it just looks kind of cool. It looks different. It looks unique. And this was my first splurge of 2021, and it just looks amazing. So whenever we'll get it, I mean, I don't pay attention to my own. March 2022. It's not happening. Okay. Anyway, next up. Castles of the Mad King Ludwig, Bezier Games. This seems like it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago almost in my mind. But this is how you run a campaign, especially with a remake of a game that's a retail thing in the first place. And that's the other question that this video, that's another question that this whole campaign raised to me was, are we going to see more of this? Where you've got these older games that just went to the retail side of things, and all of a sudden you're, again, deluxifying them, putting them on crowdfunding, and not even worrying about having to fund it yourself, and just having crowdfunding do the work for you. Again, a lot of people like this. A lot of people were really interested in this. They did the same thing with Suburbia. I mean, it raised $1.5 million. So if it worked with Suburbia and it worked with Castles, I think you're going to see it elsewhere too, which again, a little bit terrifies me. I don't need stuff that's already in print to get reprinted, deluxified. Give me some of the things that are out of print. Give me Tigris and Euphrates. Give me things like that, or Samurai. Pick up those licenses. Pick up some of the other, Z-Man Euro games. Pick up some of those. That get reprinted. But this is where the cash is, and so that's why you're going to see this. And I guess there was one additional expansion, I think, as well. again, I liked it because they said straight up here at the top, why are you getting this? This is the mad props that I'll give the Bezier Games on this. This is what you're getting. This is new. This is all detailed summary right at the top. You don't have to scroll anywhere. It's right at the beginning. Why aren't more campaign pages doing this? I don't have a clue, but if you are looking for campaign ideas, do this, period. Tell people why and what right at the top. Don't show me the components. Tell me. Boom. There you go. Castles of the Mad King Ludwig. We'll see it sometime in 2022, I'm guessing. Okay, Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, the card game. And I've heard this one go back and forth. I've heard some people say they prefer this. I've heard others say that they still prefer Terraforming Mars. I mean, it's definitely easier to get to the table. It's definitely going to be quicker. There was the whole snafu of retail versus production, but I know a lot of people are still looking for the Kickstarter copy because it comes with what? Little promo pack, I believe, that it came with. So again, it's a more streamlined Terraforming Mars, and people were very pleased with that. People are liking it overall in general about that side of things. Again, Terraforming Mars is nothing for me. A lot of people, it's their favorite game. It's just not a game I've ever played. I have no desire to play. The theme does nothing for me. I have no interest in it from that standpoint, but I recognize that it's an important contribution to our hobby, and this thing killed it for a card game that was very anticipated with, again, $1.2 million. So there you go. Now, Zombicide Undead and Alive. The latest iteration of the Zombicide, the latest iteration that's out of CMON's title flagship of Zombicide. They went Old West, and people really loved the Old West. I was not expecting necessarily this amount of reception from it. It went the typical CMON route. You got your exclusive with just your core pledge, then you've got just your exclusive with your one expansion, and then you've got your 37 other expansions that go with it as well. That they do. But it was $240 with all of the, I think this is all the gameplay stuff. So, I mean, that's not actually a horrible price for the $240 all-in gameplay, especially when you compare it to something like Primal, which was, a $289 already. So, again, this is more plastic. This is more iterations of the same thing. So you're not necessarily getting as much unique stuff, hopefully, as you're getting with Primal in that sense. But, I mean, it's going to be Zombicide, and they've streamlined and improved it on the 2.0 edition. And they've added like the little train thing and the train running through and running stuff over. And the Western theme, everybody loves the Western theme apparently. But again, we're going to see what happens and how many roofs are blown off when we see the Marvel one that's going to be coming out again sometime in 2022. We don't have a date yet. So I am anticipatingly eager on that one. And hopefully they've done a little bit different with some of these zombies and some of these other mechanisms here. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a little bit more of the same in a slightly different present or package or bow. So, also, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, next up, we have Root. Root. I went in for all the hirelings. I got all the hirelings. I got the Marauder. I got a couple trades from local stuff in terms of a few of the other expansions. So I'm all in at this point. It's a war game disguised as a kid's game. You either like it or you don't. There's no in between really. It's a hard game to get to the table, but it's a meta evolving group game. So if you like that sort of thing, if you have repeated plays, if you value repeated plays, this is where it's at. I don't think there's anything better out there that you're going to be, be able to get. Again, it's going to give you 2 new expansions, a bunch of these hirelings that are giving things a little bit of a spice in terms of the variability, even between the factions themselves. And it's just more of a good thing. It's the next chapter in it, but I don't remember if they said this is the last one or not. The Clockwork expansion 2 for more solo play. But the main intriguing thing for me and the why it got me in at this point is because they said that 2 of these factions are much better at the 2-player count, which could be my potential lower player count with my wife. Or even that we play a lot at 3, and so especially if they're going to be better at lower player counts, that was what really swung me that way. It just broke $2 million. We'll have it sometime in the beginning, first quarter or 2 of 2022. Don't worry, don't care. I need to buy the digital so I can learn how to play in the first place. So there you go, Marauders. Now, least likely on this list that I would have said before this of breaking $1 million, and this was Gamelin Games, but this was actually more than Root did, 2.1 million, and that's because it went dungeon crawl. Tiny Epic went dungeon crawl, and they gave everyone the dungeon crawl, and with all the Tiny Epic games, you're getting a bunch of exclusives, and the value is always there. But again, I have never been satisfied by any of the Tiny Epic games. If I want to play a dungeon crawl, I'm going to play an actual dungeon crawl. If I want to play a small filler game, I'm going to play a small filler game. I just don't get a lot of benefit from these. Now, this one obviously looks much more appealing to me than any of their other previous ones. So if there was any one to end up in my collection, this is probably the most likely. At the same time, I just, the 2 that I've played, I haven't been super impressed by. So I'd love to play it. I'd be more than willing to play it, but I'm not going to go out my way and pick it up. Yeah, so when you get down to the content, limited exclusive deluxe content for the Kickstarter stuff, but it doesn't look like a lot of the content is actually exclusive this time around, so you might be able to get this up at retail about the same as you could, maybe just a little bit more pricey from that side of things. So we'll just see how it compares to other dungeon crawls or other games of this ilk that are sort of that little bit of a niche in between. So there you go. Everdell. I mean, this is the complete Everdell collection. Again, this blew the roofs off of things, almost $5 million. You had people selling, and this was another interesting aspect. This is probably the most interesting aspect of this campaign altogether, is you had people selling their set that they had before this and buying the whole set because they felt somehow slighted that people could get everything for $199. But then they would sell their, 3 games or so before that with 3 expansions in the game for like 150 or 170 bucks. So they thought they could get a good deal from that. So you still see a lot of people doing that. And so I imagine that a lot of people are going to be ending up with this. And, they'll end up being some on the secondary market. So it's going to be interesting to see what the secondary market price looks like this. But again, as just a person who has not played any of the expansions, I'm interested to see because, again, I don't know what my interest would be in something like this if I already have 3 expansions for it in the first place. Because these are not small expansions. These is not a 30-minute game. Like one or two later on this list that I can sort of mix and match with. And so, again, it's a beautiful game. I understand why it's as highly rated as it is because it was basically the ultimate intro worker tableau placement style game, if that makes sense. And I can see why it did what it did because it offered a really good value and a really good price for a very, very, very well thought of game. So, Everdell. Now, going at the opposite end of things, Stellaris Infinite Legacy, a 4X board game based on the PC game, and it attracted a lot of eyes because it was a PC game. Now, they launched initially with one video that didn't talk about the gameplay. They didn't launch with a rule book. The majority of the campaign had a lack of both of those, and yet somehow they still raised $2.5 million because people are really backing off of name. And people are really doing that nowadays with video games, and this was the first big test of this where it actually had a little bit of a dip in the middle of the campaign. Not huge by any means, but it definitely slowed down because I feel like it had like almost $2 million in the first day. So we'll see what Academy Games can do, but I also look at this game and this type of game, and especially when you compare it to one later on this list that is also a 4X spacefaring game that is not based on a video game, of why should I play this as opposed to the video game. And from everything I got from this, I didn't see that people were saying that this was drastically different except for like the portability and the, I can jump in and jump out sort of thing because there's ongoing and there's like ways to mitigate, like if you're 3 games in versus you're a new guy coming in. So if that can work, great. That's going to be something that the other 4X games, especially the spacefaring ones, don't have. But otherwise, I mean, you're going to be going against Voidfall. You're going to be going against Eclipse. You're going to be going against those tried and true Twilight Imperiums of what else is out there. And are you going to want to actually get that over one of those? So there you go. Now, Robinson Crusoe. This was a value-laden package as well. I did a breakdown. I think I did a Should You Back on this one because it had a lot of miniatures and a lot of plastic for a game that I didn't really think was plastic-based in the first place. And again, they locked in a lot of gameplay here, and so you got some gameplay with some of these stretch goals. And again, the value, no one's going to debate the value, but I hate when the gameplay stuff is pledge locked with non-gameplay stuff. And the big Book of Adventures was basically the big one. I think it had like 50 or something different scenarios. And so that was the one that I really suggested. If you were going to play this, I mean, great, go for that. Because, I mean, you're never going to get through that all. I haven't gotten through Marvel United. Speaking of Marvel United, it's coming up soon. Marvel United's villains, and there's like 30 of them or 20 of them, and those games are much shorter than Robinson Crusoe. So if I can't get through all of those, unless you're like a lifestyle game with this, some of this stuff is nice, but are you going to actually use it is also the practical thing, which again, practicality in this hobby, that's a whole nother thing. But I mean, this was sort of one of the big first ones on GameFound that was non-Awakened Realms that sort of tested the waters to see what could be done and to show us what can be raised on there in the first place. And it was a success. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more bigger name projects go this route in the near future in 2022. Mythic Battles. This is Pantheon. I got the base pledge, the core pledges on both Pantheon and Ragnarok are by far and away the best pledges. And they added a whole bit of the Norse mythology now. And it's just a question of how much Norse mythology you need. That's a tongue twister, Norse mythology. I can even say it right twice. And again, it's a question of how much of this do you need? Because again, it's just like Robinson Crusoe. Like I have more models already with Pantheon than I need in the first place with Ragnarok before even getting Ragnarok. And so do I really need all of Loki's 3 kids, which are all cool and they're all Titan sized? And you got Jormungand, you've got Surt, and you've got the other one that I'm forgetting, Jormungand, Surt, and Nighthawk. I don't, but I'm probably going to be hard pressed not to get them because they look so amazing. And I do have a little bit of FOMO on stuff that really strikes me, but do I really need them? No, I don't really need them whatsoever. I should be happy with just this pledge and get nothing else. But as with Monolith, with their core pledges, again, like most of these, the core pledges is where the value is, and this one just struck home true from that side of things. And this is by far and away one of the best 1v1 map battling asymmetric powers dueling games that's out there that is non-card based. And it just flies under the radar. There's very little Board Game Geek content on it in the first place, which is shocking and surprising. I'm always surprised at how little there is over there. So eventually I'm going to put something out so we can have more. There you go. Now, if you had also said the second most surprising one on this list for $1 million, and this was Blacklist Games, Lasting Tales. This was the more of a skirmish game, skirmish tabletop miniature game rather than a board game. Blacklist Games, they've got a couple projects going. I don't know where things are at with some of their Street Master stuff. They had a bunch of Street Master stuff that was like way behind and from previous campaigns that they didn't print enough on. They did one that wasn't on Kickstarter or GameFound. It was on like Indiegogo or one of those other ones. And like that one's still in the process of fulfilling as like a new expansion for Street Masters, but then they were still fulfilling previous Street Masters stuff through the use of the funds on that one too. It was weird. Anyway, this is a skirmish game. I have no interest in it whatsoever, but it raised a ton of money. And so hopefully Blacklist Games is getting good because they've done a couple big campaigns from that side of things with the miniatures. So they definitely put out the miniatures that people want, especially ones that are cross-portable D&D. And I think that's where a lot of the money is also coming in because people are using them in both. So those campaigns are always big hits on crowdfunding. So there you go. Next up, Monster Hunter World, the board game. This is one of the few on the list that I actually look at and I go, I kind of regret not backing this because you can't actually get on the late backing as well at this point. It's already past that. And again, I have Primal, so I don't need this. And again, I wasn't as enamored with some of the mechanics, but I give Steamforged Games a lot of credit here because they put out some unique mechanics. They put it all up front. Now, again, I think their stretch goals were kind of bleh in the first place, but I'm not going to back this for stretch goals. I'm going to back this because I like the project and I want to get the project, not because the stretch goals are alternative models and alternative stuff. That's fine, you know? And for all the people that were arguing, oh yeah, I'm not going to get it because the stretch goals aren't good enough. Well, you probably shouldn't get it in the first place because you clearly don't like the game enough in the first place. And so if that's the case, then just don't back it. Period. Boom. Done. And they had the price points out for the most part at the beginning as well. So I give them a lot of kudos for that side of things as well because they had those listed on their website. Again, I don't think the lower pledges are going to get you hardly anything in terms of worthwhileness, but this is one that I wouldn't be surprised if I tried to pick up on the secondary market depending on how the reviews are, if it really strikes home, because I think this probably looks like their best game to date. And I think this looks like another IP that is going to be branded well from that side of things. And I think, again, you're going to see more video games come because they've seen the cash on this, on Darkest Dungeon, on Six Siege, on all of those things. And so I think you're just going to see more and more and more of this in 2022. That's a top trend of 2022, probably even 2023 that you're going to see in board games, period. Speaking of that, IPs, X-Men, Marvel United. You've heard me talk about Marvel United enough. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's a harder game than it looks. You need some of the expansions. You need some of the stretch goals. If you got those, boom, it's there. This is taking all the criticisms of the first one and allowing you to play as the villains. It's adding some uniqueness between the heroes because some of the heroes, especially in the base game, they're just bleh. And again, probably all the expansions are going to be created equal. There were a few surprises in here as well. And this is pledge locked content, which really irritated me as well. I don't think I'm getting Storm or Old Man Logan, and I'm probably going to have to buy those separately because I didn't really want First Class, I didn't really want Deadpool, and I didn't really want Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four one was a big shocker. And the price point was also a big shocker, $295. I think people were expecting like low 200s, 250 maybe, but $295 because they threw out like 3 expansions in the last like 2, 3, 4 days of the campaign. So that was a big surprise to everybody. But I think they're adding a team mode. They're adding, you can play as villains. They have these huge freaking sentinels. This is going to be awesome. The Horsemen of Apocalypse expansion is going to be good. It's just all these other ones in between going to be good too. And the first Kickstarter showed that they weren't all equal. And so that was my only hesitation. And I don't need a ton. I need enough that I like. So I probably should have gone with the playmat as well. But again, this thing blew the doors off of stuff as well as one of the top funders in 2021 as well of almost just under $6 million. So there you go. So now we reached the highest funding game of the year. This was The Witcher, Old World. This is the one that probably put me on the map. This was one of my highest viewed videos of the year, period. I think it's at about 7,000 views of my review, my overview of the game itself as the competitive mode. And yeah, I haven't really heard back from these guys since. Anyway, I accessed it for the Pledge Manager for €1, and I just decided not to go in on it. I just can't play. This is a longer game than it seems initially, and I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's very solid. I don't think people are going to be disappointed on it, but it's also not a game that I can see myself being able to get to the table easily, and I think it works a little bit better as a cooperative rather than a competitive. It's like this in Skyrim. I think I expected Skyrim to be competitive, and I expected this to be cooperative, and they went with like solo competitive and cooperative with this one, and they have a bunch of expansions and a bunch of stretch goals and a bunch of deluxeifications with the extra miniatures. And again, I don't think you need the miniatures. I think the miniatures are nice, but I think they're a little bit unnecessary with this game. And again, they've got a couple different boards going on. They've got a couple of different varieties and a couple different, boss monsters that you can be adding in terms of like changing the end game. And so, I mean, again, it's going to be a very solid game. It clearly has a huge IP following. Again, video game based IP following. Holy cow, people. If I haven't said it 6 times, I'll say it 8 times in this video at least. It's going to be there. It's going to be there. It's going to be there. And it's going to be a very solid game. People are going to be very happy with this. It's just going to be a question of, can you get it played? And for me, I couldn't get it played. And so I wasn't willing to spend, $300 on a game that I can't get played, as cool or as awesome as this game is. And that was the big barrier for me, as much as I actually enjoyed it, contrary to a lot of people that actually watched my review. It's because they didn't actually watch it. I liked it, but it just also wasn't a perfect fit. And unless you're a perfect fit nowadays, I'm trying to get rid of stuff too. So there you go. Isle of Cats. Expansions for Isle of Cats with modules. And again, I haven't played Isles of Cats. I have the copy sitting right behind me in the shelves. But I hadn't been able to get it played, so I didn't need more modules for it. But again, this is probably one of the preeminent polyomino games that's out there, and people really like it in terms of, again, just right here, actually, the standard, the family, as well as the solo. And Frank West does a great job. And so it's just choosing what you wanted, and they have a little bit for everything. They broke down the campaign of whatever you wanted, however you wanted to get it. You could get everything that you wanted to, and whatever the price point was going to be, including these little pin collections. So, again, I didn't need the new content. I didn't need the new box. I just wanted to be able to get mine played in the first place, and I couldn't. So, again, this is something I could see myself picking up later, because I don't think they do a whole lot of exclusive content. They just basically give you a better price point. So, there's that, and that's okay. So, actually, no, Kickstarter pack. But although I'm guessing you can probably pick some of those up at retail anyway, I think. If I'm wrong, so be it. But that's Isle of Cats. That was a big surprise, too, breaking $1 million. Next up, we have Six Siege from Mythic Games. Now, this one was a little bit of a different twist, because, again, you have a known IP in the video game side of things in the Rainbow Six Counter-Strike arena, but now it's taken to the tabletop side of things, because you've got all these different teams, and then they had them as years or expansions or skins, if you will, with different map packs and different settings and different ways to combine them. And again, I thought it was just a little bit too much. And again, I can't see myself playing this as a 2 versus 2 game. This is really a 1 versus 1 game, and I don't have a dedicated 1 versus 1 player type game that's going to be a 2 to 3 hour game with the drafting of these teams and the mixing and matching. I love the idea of this. This is one of those games up in my head I know I would love, but this is one of those games that I would never be able to get to play. And Mythic is sort of like, okay, well, we're going to give you this other stuff that's, non-gameplay skins for the video game. And that's going to be the big benefit. And you're going to have a couple of these other little unlocks as well here. But I just looked at it and I said, wow, I don't really need a lot of this stuff. I'm really not sure I want to pay $200 for a game I'm not sure I'm going to be able to play. Like, I love the tactical nature. I love the combat. I love the back and forth. But the actuality of playing a 1 versus 1 game that's going to take this long with that much overhead and that much nuance with all of these different characters and all of these different powers, I just don't think I could actually get it played. I would love to have a dedicated gaming partner to this, but this is not going to be my wife's ilk, and so I could easily pass on it from that side of things, as much as there was FOMO on this side of things. Mythic also has their stuff through their store, so you can usually get them that way. So that's where I'm going to keep an eye on it and maybe pick up an expansion or two if I could get this played in the first place. But that is Six Siege. Now then you have something completely off the wall, The Binding of Isaac. Again, I have no knowledge of this. I didn't know this was a thing until the first Kickstarter, and this is an expansion to the original Binding of Isaac: The Four Souls. It raised almost $6.7 million, so more than almost everything else on the board gaming scene, because this guy has a bunch of a cult following in terms of the just internet fame sort of style of things. And there's these insane pledge levels, this $2,600 pledge level. Again, just these massive pledge levels and a little bit of everything. $800, $400. I have no clue about this game itself. I have no clue if it's good or not. I have not seen it. I have not played it, but I know that it's got a lot of following and it's got a lot of stuff going on in there. And it's of the ilk of a little bit more complicated Exploding Kittens, Unstable Unicorns. And so I'm assuming it's a little bit better than those two. But again, I don't have any experience with it. It'd be one that I'd be happy to play, but one that never appealed to me from a backing side of things. But clearly, I am in the minority on that side of things, because this raised a ton of money, and that's all I really can say about it. There you go. Scarface 1920. Again, this is another surprise for me. This was a plastic-laden area control game that raised just over $1 million. Wasn't interested because I don't do area control. I don't do the heavy plastic on the area control as well. And this just is a different theme. It's a different appeal for everyone. And you can see all the exclusive stuff here and the free expansion pack as well, only on Kickstarter. So you can see why people got it. And again, it was a lot of money for one of those games. Over $100 for just the core game with the stretch goals. And you're looking at nearly $200 with shipping for the expansion with the deluxeification. So again, deluxeification's creeping their way out of the Euro side of things and the worker placement side of things and into the other aspects of things with these asymmetric gang factions that you're going to be utilizing to control Chicago on the 1920s, right? People have a type, and it raised a whole bunch of money and reached a whole bunch of stretch goals. And when you hit a bunch of stretch goals, people get really interested, and it becomes a pile-on sort of bandwagon thing. And so it's good for games because then they can say that there's more value and there's more reasons you should get it. So all in all, we'll see what it looks like at retail, and we'll see how the area control people like it compared to even several other games on this list. Now, this is the interesting part. Now we're getting into the second half of the year here. Starting off the second half of the year, we had Chronicles of Drunagor, the Age of Darkness Apocalypse expansion over on GameFound. Again, GameFound's bigger test of getting $1.5 million. This was everything more. And so actually it was closer to $2 million with this little easy pay thing that you can do by monthly installments on your crowdfunding. How do you feel about that, right? Whew, I'm not sure, but this game looks awesome. I have to get my copy out really soon, and I just have to play through it because I am backing this at like the $1 pledge to see how much of this stuff that I want. And that's going to be the real question, is I don't probably need all of it, but I may get a big chunk of it if I really like it because I have a sweet spot for these types of dungeon crawls with action systems and these cube system that is unique. And again, miniatures aren't anything for me, but this, along the lines of something like Madara, really gives me a better vibe, along with Storm Thunder. Those are my like top 3 of this ilk. How much of this do I need? How much of this do I need? How much of this do I need? That's a tongue twister as well. And the question is, I don't really know, but it looks freaking fantastic. And it gives me Storm Thunder vibes with a little bit more linear path, but more mechanics just to go with it. So I'm really intrigued by this one. I'm really excited by this. And so I am unfortunately going to probably open my wallet up after this video ends and see where this leads me. But that's Chronicles of Drunagor starting off the second half of 2021. Then we go straight over to GameFound as well, again, back to back with the first of the 2 Masters of the Universe Fields of Eternia, again from Archon Studios. And this one was interesting because it was a co-op game that wasn't really expected along those lines. Solo or co-op with more area control as opposed to CMONs, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They say exclusive content. And the big one with this one was that it was continent locked. You can't get it in North America. And that's the big difference. The CMON has the license for North America. This is the non-North America. So there have been people talking back and forth about how to import it and how to do that. I'm not going to get into that. But you've got a little bit of different characters, actual interactions and gameplay that is significantly different than the CMON one. And again, I don't really know what to make of this one. I didn't look at this one too closely, to be frank with you guys, as I was not going to be able to get it. And so again, what is it going to look like? A lot of miniatures, a few expansions here down at the bottom. And it's cooperative, which, again, I'm a big fan of cooperative, so maybe I should have looked at it a little bit deeper. If I can't get it, why tempt myself and why make myself look at something I can't have in the first place? So I didn't. Next up, Iridia. I dollar back this. Iridia as the preeminent, the narrative-driven story campaign games to break $1 million. And Cody has some fanboys and fangirls and fan everybody. Because a lot of the comments around this were, I love Xayah, and therefore I am going to back this because he did such a great job with Xayah in the first place. And I guess the question was, how much of the nitty-gritty, like, dive down into the dungeon, then into the dungeon's house, then into the dungeon's mouse hole, and then what loot is in the dungeon's rooms, mouse holes, area. I'm being facetious, but not also at the same time. Again, I don't think the mechanisms are in question. I don't think the gameplay is in question. I think it's just a question of whether or not this detailed level of dungeon crawl narrative exploration is for you or not. And for me, when I saw how detailed it was diving down into some of those areas and some of the combinations of the worlds and the characters and the points of interest, I just said, you know what, I probably can't do this. Again, I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be amazing from people are going to love it standpoint. The reviews are going to be great. I don't think there's going to be any issue from that standpoint whatsoever. I don't think there's going to be any issue there. But again, is it right for you, or is it just a really good game that's not going to fit your collection and it's going to sit there and collect dust for a couple years? So that was my problem with it. And that's why I just ended up not upgrading my pledge at all. Again, not because I can't. There's no issue of can or can't. I could back almost all these games and it'd be fine. But again, I just can't do this level of exploration. entering the cellar, entering the location and the vent, entering the house, talking to the character, doing the stairs. I mean, this is as close to an RPG as you're going to get, period. That's out there. So if you want as close as physically possible to the video game, this is your game. If not, go play a video game. Next up, Flamecraft. Again, one that blew the doors off of people's expectations. Apparently, cute dinosaurs plus light worker placement is people's vibe. And they're making coffees and cakes, and it raised $2 million. Again, I believe there was a fair amount of exclusives right here of most of the non-gameplay, though, I believe. It was more deluxeifications. That was the big difference, is if you want the deluxeified one, you're getting it here. If you can not get the deluxeified one, you can get it at retail for about a third of the cost. Again, as a light, no one's saying this is the super deepest, no one's saying this is the crunchiest, no one's saying this is the most difficult or the most competitive. They're just saying, hey, it's a light Euro worker placement style game, and it's got a cute aesthetic, and we like the appeal to it, and sometimes it's just fun to have games like that in your collection, and there you go. That's really all you need to know, and it comes with plushies. Black Rose Wars Rebirth. This is probably the only other one on the list that I regret a little bit of not backing, just because, again, I love the premise, I love the mages, I love the asymmetry, I love the powers, I love the concept that this is a 2.0 version, essentially, too. Now, you're not going to have all the ones from the 1.0 version in terms of the schools and the classes that are going to be going head-to-head in combat, but hopefully they've streamlined some of the stuff that was the issue in the first place with the first one, so hopefully you're getting rid of some of the problems or the criticisms that had people sort of less than appealing in the first place. I mean, the price point is, it's an expensive price point, period. You're getting, I think, a very solid game for what it is. I don't think there's anything else out there like this. It's, again, just like this game. When I want to play a game like this, I want this to run to an hour to an hour and a half, and people say this runs anywhere between 2 and 3 hours. And so for me, I couldn't do it from that side of things. As cool as the miniatures look, and as cool as the powers and the asymmetry, like I said, between all of the factions is, and all the stretch goals that you're getting here, again, it'd be more FOMO than anything else. It wouldn't get played in my house. And if it would get played in my house, I'll probably pick it up on the secondary market. But there's Black Rose Wars. It looks like a solid upgrade edition 2.0 from the original Black Rose Wars. So, speaking of Masters of the Universe, we're going back to it. Clash of Eternia. This takes the one versus all streamlined gameplay from Rise of Moloch from their previous game, and puts it on where you can either be the good guys as the one or the bad guys as the one, which is a new twist on things. And it just does Eternia there, in a combat, hex-based, grid-based game, and you have a bunch of expansions. Now, again, I love the one versus all. You know I love me one versus all. I love me miniatures in that sense, but I looked at this and I said, one, I'm not really sure how different each of these characters are, and two, these plastic miniatures look like they're literally from the 80s. And so I want my game IP from the 80s, but maybe not my stuff to look like it's from there. So the combination of the two of those and my no attachment to Masters of the Universe made this an easy pass, actually, in the end. And again, it's probably going to be solid. It's probably going to be a different take on the 1v all. It's probably going to be even a little bit of a 2.0 version on it. But again, you know, CMON did their thing with a bunch of expansions, and they raised $2 million. And again, it's probably a little less because it's the 1v all. But there you go. Next up is Voidfall, the 4X spacefaring game with a Euro twist, described by David Turczi as Spirit Island in space. And only if it were Spirit Island in space, I would probably get it. And if it didn't have the 3 or 4 hour play length, I would be all over it. It has deep empire management, and it has just an absolutely competitive mode as well as cooperative mode, because I love me some co-ops. But it's just not going to be the right style for me. I cannot play for 3 or 4 hours. Again, you have the Galactic Box, which is an upgrade deluxeifications. You have the gameplay all in here. And then you have the minimal luck actual gameplay itself with the deterministic combat, which was attractive to a lot of people as well. Again, the modes, you know what, I wish you maybe had done one or the other, but I understand as a 4X, having both is very interesting. And again, all of what you see is what you're going to get. I don't think there's any question of the game is going to be solid. It's just, again, maybe, is it going to be solid enough for you? Is it going to be something you can hit to the table? And if it's not, well, again, it's going to be collecting dust. So that was the main thing that prevented me from getting it. You've got these cool little miniatures that appear to be painted as well with the cubes. And again, they go through enough. There was enough information out here in the first place that you know what you're getting. So that's Voidfall. On from Voidfall, I completely messed up. I completely forgot about Mythwind. Mythwind is the other Persistent World sort of narrative campaign game. Now, asymmetric with different factions having different mechanisms in their boards themselves. I got to try this one out firsthand. Again, not a game for me, but I know why people loved it, and it had a great backing, had a great following. Brenda did a great job of cultivating a community in the first place, so I give him a lot of persistent credit from that side of things. But it just wasn't for me. And it was a persistent pioneering world where you're managing resources, you're navigating, you have this persistent world where, again, the question was, do you like games that are open-ended? Do you like a game that doesn't have an end or a victory or a win, or just that you're accomplishing things? And this was sort of the question that this game raised. And again, I don't think it's going to be a bad game whatsoever. I think it's very solid. I was very content playing it, but I also didn't feel like it was for me either. So it's going to be for people, and it's just not with a lot of these games. And again, expansion included already, miniatures included already, and the miniatures were really nice. And you can get all the deluxeifications as well. And so that was the big gist of it, and it just killed it as well for a game that kind of came out of nowhere from a lot of people's standpoint. Stretch goals as well. And again, the town board, the asymmetric factions, and the abilities and the tech tree that you're going to be able to utilize is just kind of cool. So again, nothing else out there like it in terms of that, especially with the mechanisms and the asymmetry in the first place. So Mythwind. Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is final Too Many Bones. Unbreakable. It's the one that finally got me in. I traded locally for a copy of the original core game, and Unbreakable just seemed like too good of a place to get in, especially with the free expansion. And this being the last one of the Too Many Bones' saga, although I doubt it's probably going to be the last one from their overall universe. And they just threw a bunch of stuff in, and they hit more stretch goals than I think they've ever hit. This is probably, I think, Chip Theory Games' biggest campaign ever. It might be. If I'm wrong, but again, and they're offering all the stuff, and all the stuff for flat shipping as well too, especially reprints of a lot of the stuff. So if you're looking to get in and you want to still get in, I think you can still get in on the late backing. So if you should, and this might be one of your final chances to get some of this stuff very easily, except for high priced on the secondary market. So if you're really into Too Many Bones, or you just found out about Too Many Bones, you should probably check this out, because this game is adding more of a good thing to a very good thing. And people love it for what it is, but you also have to know what you're getting into. You're paying a premium price for a premium product. There you go. Lords of Ragnarok, the successor to Lords of Hellas, the 2.0 version of Lords of Hellas, with a different incorporation of how it's utilizing mechanisms, as well as the roundel in the middle, and just the asymmetry in terms of the factions, again, in terms of the monsters and the gods, and how you're interacting and how you're winning and how you're defeating the monsters and how you're battling, and just everything along those lines. Awakened Realms, again, is always, just like a lot of these big campaigns, the best value is the core pledge, but there's a couple expansions. They have their Sun Drop, which they're known for as well, and you can get a little bit of everything alongside of things. The nice thing is that they don't core lock. The nice thing is that they don't pledge lock a lot of their content behind the miniatures, which is great. And so again, it's just a bigger, better, hopefully more streamlined version of Lords of Hellas, but different enough that they're saying that you can maybe have both on the same shelf. But I think ultimately you're going to have people that are going to prefer one or the other, not necessarily people that are going to play both from that side of things. So it's more of what is your ilk, if you will, on the area control aspect of Awakened Realms' sides of things. Next up, we have Resident Evil, another one from Steamforged Games on this list. This is going back to, we did Resident Evil 2, we did Resident Evil 3, now we're going back to Resident Evil 1, and they're taking the solo and the co-op play in it. They're doing an open world campaign, and they're also adding puzzles. It was a little bit of a cheaper price for the core pledge, but the all-in definitely was not cheaper, £217. And look at all these expansions you're getting. And again, a lot of exclusives with this one, unlike Monster Hunter. You can see, again, alt sculpts, enemies, player characters, everything there from that. And again, I have no interest in the horror side of things. So whether it was the video game, whether it is the tabletop game, horror does not do it for me. And so I'm easily passing on a lot of these horror games. And again, however unique they are, however cool they are, it just doesn't do anything for me. I don't know if I'm in the minority, but I mean, if you look at the total funding, it had 1.4 million pounds, which is not inconsiderable, all things considered, and almost 10,000 people. I know that the cult following is there, so the question just is really, is this game hold up? Apparently, these have gotten better. Two and then 3 is better than 2, and I'm assuming 1 will be better than 3. But again, the question is, people are saying, well, I want this character or this character. Again, I have no idea some of these characters. I never played the video game. And so how true it is to the video game and how it works there. I like the fact that they went with a little bit different, mechanisms in terms of the puzzles and more than just the shoot 'em up, because Resident Evil is just that. And Resident Evil, from what I know, the vagueness that I know, is it's not just a straight up walk through shoot zombies. It's you're very tense. You're very quiet. You only shoot when you have to. Resources are very limited. If you can do that on a tabletop side of things, all the more power to you. And this has been one of Steamforged Games' better games that they put out in terms of the Resident Evil side of things. So their pedigree is definitely improving. We'll see. Senjutsu, 2-player battler, 3D element of Exceed with asymmetric individual characters, with 58 stretch goals and solo co-op reverses. So again, a little bit of everything. They did the early bird, which turned some people off, and they had expansion after expansion after expansion, which also was a little bit unappealing. And the overall was more like Lords of Ragnarok price than it should have been for like a 2-player battler. So I went in on it because I wanted to see what it was like, because I love me some 2-player battlers. I think this was another one that really surprised a lot of people, and people were very divided. They either loved it or they hated it, and there wasn't a whole lot of in between. So Stone Swords Games did a great job there of marketing and putting their game out, and hopefully it turns out to be as good as it sounds. Marvel Dice Throne. What can I say about Roxley? Roxley does a great product, period. It's very solid. You know, the gameplay is going to be good. It's a reskin of the original Dice Throne, but it's now with Marvel characters. And it's not just a reskin. I say that facetiously because it's completely different, but it's using the same core system. The only criticism that I would have that other people had too is you went with a very obvious core group here. But again, you're appealing from a mass market standpoint. So, you know, if you can get a lot of people in that aren't playing board games that can play this, you know what? So be it. It wasn't for me. I played Dice Throne. It just didn't click. You know, maybe I'll play it again someday and I'll get it. But for that reason, I couldn't back it as much as I love me some Marvel IP. So again, I don't think there's any doubt about the value of the $84 here, especially with the promo pack. And, you know, there's some cool heroes, but again, it wasn't enough to get me in because, again, I got enough other Marvel games that I'm happy with, as well as the upcoming Marvel one from Zombicide. Monster Apocalypse from Mythic Games, a redo of Monster Apocalypse, now the board game, with a bunch of expansions. Basically, it reminds me of a 3D version of King of Tokyo, where you're skirmish battling with monsters and kaiju rather than just, you know, rolling dice. And so, again, as you can see, the 3D element is very prevalent. It's more skirmish war game-like-ish. Not really war game, but you know what I'm saying. Rather than, you know, where, you know, King of Tokyo, where you're just moving in and out. So it's that in a nutshell, and it's got a lot of plastic. And if that appeals to you, especially from a thematic standpoint, I know people have said to me it does, you can get in on it as well from this. They're also offering a veteran pledge for people who had already backed in the previous. So you can either get everything you need, or you can just return back to Monster Apocalypse and get what you need. But again, a lot of stuff. $500 worth of stuff, which is way too much for me as well. So there you go. Now, going back to Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, the adventure board game. Again, the question always is with the video games, like I mentioned earlier, is do you need this versus the video game? I mean, this is true video game. I read the rulebook. I know a lot of people aren't always happy with Modiphius, with how they did things, and they put Call to Arms in here from Skyrim, which was completely unnecessary. I don't see any reason to be promoting a second game that you already have at retail with this new game that you're promoting on crowdfunding. But I read the rulebook. I watched some of the gameplay. It looks solid. I don't think there's any question this is going to be a good game. It's just whether or not, again, it's right for you. The chapters are going to be good. The interesting standpoint is just all the mitigation and the dice rolling. And it's going to be a length thing too, because I don't think it's going to play very short. And I'm not very good at saving things, and so that's going to be more of the biggest challenge. They revamped the campaign as they went through it, and they changed things around, which was very well received, to be frank, because I think there were a lot of criticisms when they first launched. So it was good to know that they were open to changing things, but it was also a little bit concerning that they didn't realize a lot of these were issues in the first place. But again, I think this is a relatively complete game, so I think they're actually delivering it relatively quickly within a year. And so I don't think there's going to be a lot of question of what it's going to be or how it's going to be, because there's not really going to be any changes from that standpoint. And again, a lot of stuff. And so if you're going to get it, you really need to get it on here because of all of these unlocks and all of these unlocks. And again, a lot of content, too much content even, you can argue. And so you'll have more than your money's worth if you want it from that standpoint. But again, the question is, if there's this much content and this much depth to it, is it going to replace the video game for you in the first place for the people that are especially getting it? So there you go. Weather Machine by Lacerda, the latest Lacerda deep game from Eagle Gryphon Games. And again, it just slowly trickled up. And the other benefit of getting in on the Eagle Gryphon Games Kickstarters nowadays is they offer all of their other games Kickstarter edition, which is a better value, and some of the value content that is hard to get at retail, they offer them in the Pledge Manager. And so a fair amount, maybe 15 to 20% of the funds raised were also from this. But again, it's a more unique theme that actually appealed to me. And if I had 3 or 4 hours to play and my brain worked in funny ways of strategy and Euro worker placement, I'd be all over this, because this looks more appealing than any of the other games down at the bottom that I just glanced at and showed you. And again, it's going to cost you $140 though to get it in the first place. So, but if you compare it as well, it's double the price of Darwin's Journey at the beginning of this video, which is an interesting comparison. Is it really double the game, or is it twice as good from that standpoint? I'll let you argue that out in the comment section. Last up, we have Borderlands. Again, video IPs. You know what? Again, I wasn't kidding about that. And it was a very interesting cooperative based game, miniature hex grid skirmish-ish game based on the IP in the first place. The problem was they had a rule book, they had one video of learn how to play, and there was nothing else out there. I love me some hard co-ops in terms of skirmish and upgrades and, you know, that sort of thing. But with the lack of information on this campaign, especially compared to all the other campaigns that we talked about on here, it just looked a little bit odd to me, and I wasn't willing to put my money on something that was a little bit more of an unknown. Because again, I have no interest in the IP itself. And so I didn't really have any issue, because I also have Cthulhu Death May Die, which could easily take the place of this, and I know is very solid. There you go. A lot of stuff from the Borderlands. They really played it up to the Borderlands crowd, so I think people are really pleased from that side of things. And, again, we'll see what it looks like when it actually comes out, and we'll see where it goes when it's released. But that is Borderlands. Okay, cut me a little bit slack. That wasn't exactly 39 minutes, but it was pretty close. You know me, I tend to ramble and rant a little bit and a little bit of verbose on the wordy side of things. So there you go. If you didn't see this video sponsored by Return to Catan, no, I'm just kidding. I got it for Christmas. But that's it. Those were the big campaigns for 2021. Those were all the $1 million campaigns. There were a lot of games, though, that you probably thought were going to be on this list, or maybe you thought were close to $1 million. When you look back, they weren't actually at $1 million or even close. And a lot of the games that I backed were not anywhere close to $1 million this year. So I'll have my video out for that soon as well, too. The teaser, under 20 games that I backed crowdfunding in 2021. And only a couple are on this list. There were a couple. So that's it. Also, I'll be having my part 2 of the top games to know for 2022 coming out soon. That top 10 list. Holy cow. That is an expensive top 10 list for me. No joke. Very expensive top 10 list. I don't even think it was this expensive last year in terms of my interest in these top 10 ones. So I'll tell you that right now. If you and I share taste in any of this stuff, this top 10 list is going to be, oh man, you better start budgeting right now. I'm giving you fair warning. Fair warning. Liege is letting you know. Warning, shot fired. That's all I got. Don't have a chair right now. Can't do the lean back. Although working on the core if I do. There we go. Just kidding. I'm done. I got nothing else. My kids are playing Super Mario 3D World outside the room right now, so which is easier to take turns on because then it's not Super Mario Odyssey where, the 7-year-old just plays the whole time. Yeah. Peace out. Stay classy. Have a great day. Silas, no.